again and welcome to Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd and I'll be your host for the next hour of answering those landscape questions. We love to hear from you, so if you do have a gardening question you'd like to submit for a future show, send us an email to byf@unl.edu. Do tell us as much as you can about your question, including where you live in the state or the surrounding area. Do not forget to follow Backyard Farmer on Facebook. Check out our features and past shows on YouTube. So let's start with a few samples. Kyle, you have something green on something green.
Yes, I do. I have some rose leaves and rose slug sawflies. So these are actually, despite the fact that they look like they're tiny caterpillars, they're actually not the immatures for a moth or butterfly. These are actually the larvae for a primitive wasp. And one of the ways that we can tell the difference is the number of prolegs. So those are just basically these little fleshy appendages on the abdomen. And sawflies will have 7 or more generally, and caterpillars will have 5 or fewer. But you can see here on these rose leaves, they've been causing some holes here, defoliating. And the adults will overwinter and emerge early in the spring, lay eggs on the underside of leaves. Those will hatch within about a week or two, and then these sawflies will start feeding. So there's actually 3 different species, at least 3 that we'll see here on roses. And 2 of them are really not a big problem. The common rose slug sawfly, they only produce 1 generation per year, so they'll feed early in the spring and then they'll drop off into the soil and spend the rest of the summer there. And so because of that, they're not too big of a problem. Then there's also the curled rose slug sawfly. They produce 2 generations, so similar, not as big of a problem. But what I actually have here is the bristly rose slug sawfly. And you'll see, if you have a hand lens, you probably won't see through here, but they have these bristles throughout the body. That gives them a little bit more velvety appearance compared to the other 2 species. And these will have multiple generations throughout the growing season, and so they can cause significant defoliation. So basically, if you're seeing them, you see them throughout the summer. Usually if it's a mild infestation, it's mostly cosmetic, not too big of a problem, but in some cases they can cause some issues, stress the roses, and so you might want to consider treatment in those cases. So you can start by just washing them off using a powerful spray from the hose. That'll knock a lot of them off. They're going to feed on the underside of leaves, so you need to make sure you're getting under there. Otherwise, you can also treat with, there's a variety of products that are labeled for sawflies, but generally speaking, insecticidal soaps do work pretty well, just again, really making sure you're getting good coverage on the underside of leaves. So that will be effective for these if you're having those bristly slug sawflies, excuse me. So that's what we have here.
And I think it's fun to do this.
Yeah, you can just pick them off too if you like.
Okay, Bill, you have an array
of weeds. Array of weeds. So we are seeing a bunch of different weeds getting going here, and so I wanted to talk about some of the ones that are pertinent right now so that we can think about controlling them or not controlling them or maybe noticing them in your landscape. The first one is a weed that we might see right now. It has lots of seed heads on it. They're really fine. This is annual bluegrass. It's closely related to our other bluegrasses, like Kentucky bluegrass. And so it's hard to control non-selectively. This is the poanya you'll hear about if you watch golf. It makes the greens bumpy. This is a golf course superintendent's nightmare. For lawns, though, if you mow above 2.5 inches, this guy can't really compete. And so you might pull it out, non-selective control if you want to do it that way. Mow higher, and this one will go away. This one is our sedges, and so we're seeing the yellow nutsedge starting to go. Again, you can roll it through your fingers. You'll feel those triangular stems. Sedges have edges. And what we're learning is that earlier treatment of these perennial weeds is better than later treatments. And so going out now in late May and early June each year, when areas you know you have an infestation, you can go and try to spray these with a product designed that actually says it controls nutsedge. Then we have our crabgrass starting, especially in areas that are barren and bare soil. And so when you have a couple of weeds, a product like Dimension, which is a pre-emergent herbicide, will still work as a post-emergent. But if it starts getting more than 3 leaves, then we have to start using a post-emergent type of a product to try to control these guys. And they're going to be easier to control now when they're small than when they're big. And then lastly is a weed that we all saw in full display, and we can see how sad it looks now. And that's because it spent all of its energy making those yellow flowers of our dandelion. And so the best time to spray for a perennial weed like this is in the fall, but if you missed it, this is the second best time because it's really weak right now. And so we can go out and we can spray this now and put a hurt on it going into the winter or into the summer, excuse me. And so it's weak. The herbicide will make it try to grow even more. It will burn through all its sugars. It will starve to death and then hopefully die out on the summer stress. So that's the weeds of the day, and start to identify them first, and then you can implement different control strategies that will help set you up for a good summer.
Excellent. So this is not a very nice looking game bag, Dennis.
No, this is just to keep this. So this is a rabbit, the cottontail, probably the most common rabbit in Nebraska. And it's the one that likes to eat a lot of different vegetation, especially things that you really like, the flowers. It's difficult to control them this time of year. They're hard to trap. There is no, so to speak, bait that they'll go for or toxicant they'll go for. Repellents are very, very, iffy, let's put it that way. There's really no repellent that's really works well with rabbits in the summer. So your best defense is going to be this, okay? See, they can't get through it. So the chicken wire is probably the best, and even some of the smaller rabbits with this small inch octagonal, they can't get through. It's inexpensive. It's the best way to keep rabbits out of a garden, a flower bed, or anything like that. Just bury it about 4 inches in the ground level here, extend 2 foot above the ground, about this high, and then they can't get through it. And it's very difficult for them to get over 2 foot. So.
Excellent. All right, good to know. Okay, Kyle, you get the first round of picture questions. Gosh, the very first one. This is an Omaha viewer that calls these small green caterpillars eating the knockout roses.
Yeah, this looks familiar. So it's another rose slug sawfly, probably the bristly rose slug sawfly. So again, that's the one that has multiple generations. It can continue feeding throughout the summer. So those are the ones that can be the most damaging. So if you have quite a few of them there, insecticidal soap, that's what I'd go with.
Excellent. All right, and that won't hurt the bees or butterflies, right?
No.
Okay. All right, your next one is 2 pictures here. This is a Lincoln viewer that says these tiny black insects are all over obedient plant and they're leaving these holes behind. What are they and how can they be controlled?
Yeah, it's a white margin burrowing bug. So there's kind of a little white line that goes around the outside of its body. That's where its name comes from. These are pretty cool little bugs. I don't think that the holes are actually being caused by them. I'm not sure. They look a little bit big, especially, they have piercing, sucking mouth parts. And actually these are feeders on developing seeds of mint. So I don't think that's what's causing the damage, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend any need for control here. And they're kind of cool. They actually have maternal care, so they have a burrow where the offspring live, and they provision the nest with those developing seeds.
Interesting. All right, your next one is such a cool picture. And this is an Omaha viewer, and he found an older wheel bug on his shades last year. He just saw these coming out this week or last week, and he says the nest, or whatever we call it, the egg mass there, has been there since last fall. So is he correct? And what are we really seeing here for our viewers?
Yeah, wheel bugs. These are the nymphs that are just hatching out. They're just closing or hatching out of that egg mass. So the darker ones, those are individuals that hatched a little bit earlier, still probably within, I would guess, a matter of hours or so. And then those really kind of light orangish ones in the center of that egg mass, those would be the ones just coming out. Their body hasn't sclerotized yet, so that's why they're lighter in color. But yeah, these are wheel bugs, so good guys to have around. They're predators of just about anything that they can take. So
How long does it take them to grow into the big wheel bug?
it takes several months. I think around 3 months or so for them to complete their development.
Interesting. So we'll see those later in the season.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Kyle. All right, Bill. This is a rural Craig viewer.
Okay.
Wonders what kind of grass this is pulling it the best way to get rid of it. We have 3 pictures of this one. Can't tell if it has rhizomes, and it's growing mixed in with sedums and daylilies and some other plants. So,
Yeah, that's Brome. It does have little rhizomes in there. In the second picture, we could kind of see it looked like the daughter plants were kind of connected together with kind of a white, fleshy structure that's helping to cause this guy to spread. And so when you do pull it, unfortunately, it does stimulate the plant to start to produce more daughter plants, and so it can be the challenge from that regard. That said, it still is it can be an effective way of controlling it in a bed like that, because spraying it can be questionable. There are products out there like Grass Be Gone that might have some control on it, but I would check the label with your plants. Make sure that your plants are one of the safe ones, and then make sure that this is on the label that it controls it. And that could be an approach. Otherwise, kind of the glove of death with non-selective herbicide that you could paint onto there could offer some levels of control. But even like with the nutsedges, we're finding that mechanical pulling does help a little bit because you're still getting it out of there, and so the plant is getting stressed by that, but you have to be really on it. You have to keep doing it over and over if you don't want to do a chemical control option. So I think this looks like downy brome. If it's in a lawn, you could use products like mesotrione, tenacity with some a positive effect this time of year, not later. But in that garden bed scenario, I think that would be something I'd be careful of. Yeah.
all right. And then you have another one. This viewer, 2 pictures here, obviously in a garden bed. He thinks these are wild oats. So these 2 pictures are...
Yeah, it's the same thing. You can see that if you look at the leaves, you'll see kind of a W shape as the leaf comes off of the stem. And so, brome grass has probably gotten in from a rural area and is just taking over that area. So again, there are some possible chemical control options, but I would really read that label really closely to make sure that one is effective, but also that it's safe on the plants in your beds.
And that was downy brome, right?
That was downy
last
brome,
one.
yep.
Okay,
Yep.
all right. Thank you very much. Okay, Dennis, your first question is from not Hastings. Let's see. Yes, it is. This is a Hastings viewer. They have a sunburst locust tree in the picture here. Yep. She says it was damaged in February. Something ate a large amount of the bark. She wonders if this was a deer.
I don't think this was more like squirrel than deer. They usually go for the branches, but in the winter, squirrels will take the trunk of smaller trees. So I'm saying probably more a squirrel than a deer. A deer would browse on top and not go for the bark.
Well, and it looks also like maybe some damage that would be associated with not having the mulch around the base of the tree.
Yeah, could be mower blight, but it goes so high.
Right. Yeah.
That's a be.
Somebody was backing the mower up. All right. So can she protect from the squirrel from doing this, or?
Well, you could. The best way to do it is repellent, because the squirrels are probably doing this type of damage for marking, not for food. And so a repellent, and you can use vegetable oil and cayenne pepper, works if you do know it's a squirrel, but see if it is.
All right, excellent.
Yeah.
So your next one here is in the countryside outside Council Bluffs. They've lived here 40 years. They've never had an issue with deer. And then this particular doe went right down the line and ate all of her tropical hibiscus, and then went over to the Asiatic lilies and ate the tops off that. So
Well,
what can they do?
don't put out a buffet. I mean, if you put out a buffet, they're going to come and get it.
Right.
What
After
else
40
do you-
years, though, that's interesting that they live in the country. And
But have they had this buffet out every year?
I don't know.
See, that's the clue. It just depends. The deer in that area probably are just looking for more food. Probably the place they've been eating, they're just expanding their foraging. You're going to have to put wire around that, or there's these small little devices that have 3 D-cell batteries that you put a little acorn scent in the top with cotton and put one of those in each one of the pots. They're fairly economical, and the deer would put its nose to that, get shocked, and not touch anything in that pot.
All right, so at least train the one, right?
Yeah, you train all of them if you put those things in. Everyone that comes out will get shocked, and everyone will be trained.
All right, excellent. Well, you know, squirrels might seem cute as they scurry around your yard, but they can also do some really, oh, whoops, we have one more for you, don't we?
That wasn't a squirrel.
That wasn't a squirrel. That was not a squirrel. Let's put that picture back up. Let's put that picture back up. So, speaking of deer, and this is clearly a predator of deer.
Yep. One of our best predators is deer.
Picture
Too bad we
came
don't
in
have too
from
many of them.
western Nebraska.
Yeah,
What
it
is
looks like
this?
Pine Ridge habitat.
Yeah, so what is this, and what should people be afraid of or careful about with this particular thing?
I would just give them room, give them space.
what is it?
They don't like people. They don't want to be around people. They don't like livestock. They don't want to be around livestock. They don't want to be around dogs. You just give them their space. It's a mountain lion or cougar, and all they need is their space.
All right, and they don't sneak up behind you and grab you by the neck.
No.
You hope not, anyway.
I
All
mean,
right.
they are very, you won't hear them coming.
Right.
So don't worry about it.
All right. On that note, let's go back to those cute squirrels scurrying around your yard, doing some significant damage sometimes to those trees, bulbs, and even the wood of your house. Let's take a few minutes to hear from Dennis for some tips on keeping those squirrels occupied with something other than your home and your landscape.
Talk about fox squirrels. Fox squirrels are very common in eastern Nebraska and even found throughout the whole state where we have trees. Now, trees and fox squirrels in the Midwest evolved together and adapted together. So there's not a lot of damage being done to native trees. They are able to withstand the damage. The damage is caused on non-native trees, things like elms and maples that they love to eat the sap and starch from, or the fact that they will do their territorial marking on things like your house, your deck, your picnic table, and any bulbs that you may plant. They may dig up and find them appetizing. So we're going to go over several different things that you can do to mediate damage from fox squirrels. Okay, the biggest thing that we hear about with fox squirrels is digging in planters. So if they're digging in a planted area with bulbs and things like that, you can put chicken wire over that area, okay? Put the chicken wire, roll it out, and let the plants grow up. So you put this down right after you plant. You can also do this over pots. Another damage they cause is girdling the branch of the trees to get a starch or some moisture. And if they do this around the whole branch, they will kill that branch and eventually kill that tree. How do we stop them from doing this? Well, that is a food habit. So using repellents usually won't work, plus it's hard to get the repellents that high in a tree. So when they are girdling a tree, and they're doing it often, or to small trees, what you're gonna have to do is trap them. And there's several ways to trap them. You can use a cage trap, such as this, with one side open, okay, not two sides, okay? And they go in there and they can take the bait, I'll show you in a minute, and then they could be trapped. And then you can, by spraying water on them, you're hazing them, and then you release them, they probably won't come back to the area. You can move them 100 yards and they may not come back. And depending on where area you are, you can check about having them euthanized by your Humane Society or Wildlife Control, depending on what municipality you live in. Another trap that you can use is a tunnel trap, and this can be strapped right to a tree. And it just clicks in like that, okay? Strapped to the tree. It's got grid in there. The squirrels go up because they can see light, but then it flips and the squirrel is trapped in that area. What do you use for bait? Well, anything that has corn and nuts in it, such as this. This has walnuts, it has seed and corn. These are ways to stop them. Speaking of that, if you do feed the birds and you have a problem with them getting into the bird feeder, this porcupine wire, the stainless steel type that you can twist into a circle. Of course, you buy this in 10-foot lengths. And if you hang the bird feeder on this and you're 6 foot away on all sides and 6 foot down from the branch, the squirrels can't get to the bird feeder. For the stuff on the tree, where they're on the house or anything, you can use a repellent for that. So if they're chewing on the house or chewing on the base of a tree, which we call territorial marking, you can use a repellent or mix cayenne pepper with vegetable oil and paint it on that area. And that will stop that territorial marking. So hopefully this will help you mediate squirrel problems. Squirrels are intelligent. They have been around with trees for a long time. They evolved with the trees that were here, and therefore they're not going to hurt native trees. But if they're causing problems to your non-natives in your house, remember, they're intelligent. Use some of these devices to curtail their damage, and just be squirrely.
And as Dennis said, they really are very intelligent. They have a way of outsmarting all of our efforts to keep them away. So try some of these tips and you'll maybe minimize some of the problems they cause until they have more, and bring them and retrain them to start over again. All right, this is a CoZed viewer, Kyle, and they're simply curious about this white moth that they found in their garden. We have a couple pictures of this one.
Yeah, it's a salt marsh moth, or salt marsh tiger moth. And this particular individual is a female because it has the white hind wing. Immatures, the larvae, they just feed on mostly, broadleaf weeds, so they're not really a pest. Sometimes in the fall they can move on to vegetables or crops, but not generally a problem.
They're really pretty.
Yeah.
All right. Your next one is a Ravenna viewer, and they found this moth, and I think we have two pictures of this one. And they're wondering, is it good or bad? They found it in the elderberries.
Yeah, well, I think it's absolutely good. I mean, these are probably the most beautiful moth that we have. I mean, it's just absolutely gorgeous. This is Cecropia Moth. Mm-hmm. And in this image here, it looks like, I think that's a male and female pair. Mm-hmm. And these, they feed, the caterpillars will feed on all kinds of trees and shrubs, but they're never like in any sort of numbers that they cause any damage. Mm-hmm. So
they're just gorgeous, and
yeah.
They're so big. All right, and your next one here is an ID of this, and this comes to us all the way from Scotts Bluff.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite images I've seen. This is a brown wasp mantid fly, and it looks like it's like, half mantis and half wasp or something, but it's actually in a completely different order. It's in its own group. They're closely related to lacewings mantid flies. So it is predatory like a mantis. It has those raptorial front legs that it uses for catching prey. They will hang out on flowers and kind of just catch whatever's coming there. And the other really striking thing about this is that it's a mimic of Palestes paper wasp by that coloration. So this is just a super cool insect all around. I really love that. I've never seen that species before, so that's really exciting.
Excellent. All right. Bill, this is a viewer who's in Lincoln, and they get these along the edges of the pavement with the little seed pods. They don't know what this is. What is this, and how do they control it?
Yeah, this is our friend Nutsedge there. Looks like yellow Nutsedge. Generally in the lawns, we're not seeing it pop up just yet, but along those warmer areas like the roadsides where it's a little bit hotter and maybe a little bit less dense of a grass canopy, they pop up. And when the heat starts to come, we'll start to see them grow. It's interesting. We had a research plot where we killed some grass last year, and it's all yellow nutsedge after the matter of just a couple of weeks. There's so much pressure there, and if there's grass there, it really keeps it at bay. We'll have some. You take the grass away, and it's a lawn of nutsedge in a matter of a month. And so that's where, if you do have this, the earlier applications of a herbicide that is, specifically will control nutsedge, there's a couple different active ingredients out there that will do it. So just read the label. It'll probably say right in the front because they're highlighting it on that herbicide. Do that now, and that can help. Manual pulling can help, but again, it does have tubers and rhizomes, and so you are going to kind of stimulate some more growth, so you're really going to have to get after it with the nutsedge. But yep, we're seeing a bunch of that really starting to take off now.
All right, and your next one here is this particular turf. We have this picture of it. It's been spreading a small amount every year. He's thinking about spraying it with glyphosate and then laying sod, and he wonders if spray and replace is the way to go.
Yeah, that looks like it could be, from that image, it looks like that could be bent grass or rough bluegrass, both stoloniferous grasses that grow along the top of the soil. They like wet areas, and so unfortunately from a lawn scenario, all we really are going to have, well actually we're going to have non-selective controls like your glyphosate, but you could get some control too with the bent grass with tenacity, mesotrione. And so you could try that. If you take that approach and you don't want to just cut it out, and which you could just do too, just cut it out and resod it. If you go chemical control, you have to make 3 applications, and it's better to do that in August when those grasses are a little bit weaker.
All right, thank you, Bill. All right, Dennis, this is a viewer who put up a Bathouse on the garage 2 years ago, sprayed it with a bat attractant, nothing happened. What to do?
Well, it takes a long time. It's not like you build a bat. It's not like birds that go and come every year and look for a new house. Most of our bats stay here year-round. And so unless they want a new house, they're not going to move, and they'll just build their colony bigger. One thing, looking at the house, I'm not sure if it's the right configuration for Nebraska. It looks like one of the purchased ones, not one of the made ones by our NEB guide that tells you how to make it for Nebraska. It should be on the south side of a building. It's good that it's on a building, but it should be on the south side. And what I found works better than any kind of spray attractant is getting bat guano from large brown bats, the ones that we have in Nebraska, and smear that guano on this house.
All right.
And that would attract more of them.
Excellent. Okay.
And just give it more time. It may take 3 or 4 years.
Well, and she said this is on the north side, so put it on
Yeah,
the
I
south
move it
side.
to the south side, yep.
All right. All right, your next one is also Countryside Council Bluffs. The Bluebird house was visited by the snake who went totally into the house. What is it, and is there a way to keep it from going in there again? It's a Bluebird house.
Well, yeah, so it's a bull snake, and it's doing its job feeding on those bluebirds. No, there isn't a way you can stop the snake from going in there unless you put something over the hole, but then the bluebirds can get in and out. It won't go back in the hole if there's no baby birds in there. So if it ate all
Full
of
of
them,
really good comments tonight.
I know. I mean, let nature take its course, okay? The birds are the natural prey of the snake, and they need to do that. So let them do it, period.
All right. Okay, well, we have been able to get many things started in our garden, and our containers are one of them. So here's Terry James to show us how they're coming along out at the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we're going to finish planting our containers. A few tips for great containers is make sure that you start with really good soil. Good idea to change the soil out every year, at least refresh it if you have big, huge containers. Make sure that you put a slow release fertilizer in there. And then the world is your oyster when it comes to how it looks. You can put some perennials in there for some funky colors, you know, like some of the coral bells and stuff that has some of those fantastic leaf colors. But really try to think about colors, think about texture, think about height. One of the other tips is when it starts to get hot in July, start giving it a little bit of liquid fertilizer to kind of help get those plants through the summer. That's what we're gonna do in the Backyard Farmer Garden to make our containers look great. So try it out in your garden and stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and check it out.
And right now it's time for that lightning round. All right, Dennis, are you ready?
As ready as I'm going to be.
Okay, this is a Blair viewer who said the turkeys walk through their yard. They think they're eating the bird seed and drinking out of the feeder. They let them be, but they're worried about being attacked like a rooster will attack, like a chicken rooster.
It's possible, but unlikely. I wouldn't worry about it too much.
All right, this is a Hastings viewer who has spread coffee grounds all around to keep toads away. Does that work?
Yes, caffeine kills amphibians like there's no tomorrow, but why? I don't understand. All they're doing is eating insects. They carry no germs and viruses. Why don't you want the toads?
Right.
That's my question.
This is a Lincoln viewer who wonders, do foxes come back every year to the same location, and do they stay together as a family?
They don't stay together as a family. The young will go out on their own, but they'll be in a close proximity.
All right. This is an Alma viewer who wonders how to get rid of pack rats, and we're not talking people.
It's difficult. You pretty much have to trap them.
All right. This is an Omaha viewer who wonders whether vole populations crash.
They do, but every population is different, so you can have one neighbor crash and the other one be gaining, and then next year or 2 years, one crashes and the other one gains. So it's not
lemmings off the cliff.
That's a myth.
Right.
They're a cyclic microtein rodent, and they'll go up to 250 per acre, down to 25 per acre, and then that's
go again.
the way they are.
All right. Thank you, Dennis. All right, are you ready, Bill?
Yes.
This is a Gothenburg viewer who wonders whether glyphosate loses its effectiveness when it's old.
Possibly, depending on how old it is. And the pH of the water also can influence herbicides in general. So read those labels, there'll be information about it.
All right. This is a Columbus viewer who bought a lot of seed this year and apparently has a 50-pound bag left over and wants to know how to store it for fall.
Yeah, great question. Seeds are alive, so keep it cool. If you can put it into a basement area or anywhere that's cool and dry, that's going to be the best thing. If you have a cooler, if you have some extra space in a fridge, you could put it in there too, and that would really keep its longevity.
All right. This is the David City viewer who wonders whether the seeds of those annual bluegrasses remain viable if you pull them up.
It depends. Some are going to be viable, some won't. Some are need to go through certain processes. They might germinate years after they fall into the soil. So there's so many seeds that some of them are going to be viable.
All right. Excellent. Nice job.
That was a fast minute.
It was a fast minute.
Or 30 seconds.
It was a minute and a half. You just weren't paying attention.
Oh my gosh.
All right, Kyle. This is a Minotaur viewer who is asking about what will kill the insects on hackberry leaves, and we don't know whether they're actually talking about the little gall.
Yeah, if it's the gall, probably nothing. I would just leave it alone. There's no need to control.
All right. We have a Lincoln viewer who says they've had ant mounds in their iris and peony beds, ruining the plants for 2 or 3 years. They tried products on them and nothing happens. What can they do?
Pass.
All right. This is a Bellevue viewer who wonders if the dried egg sacs of the praying mantises if they're dried up, are the mantises all gone?
They're dried to begin with. I mean, if they're opened, then they've left. They've hatched out of there.
All right. This is a Cozad viewer who wonders about controlling the big wood roaches in a wood pile. He's using 5% carbaryl. Is there something else?
I don't know of any control for wood roaches. There's generally no need to control them. They don't come inside, so.
All right, and that was the big concern is
Yeah,
inside,
they won't survive or reproduce inside.
Excellent. Nice job all. Plants of the week, unless Dennis wants to talk about them since he's sitting in the horde chair.
That would be a no.
Okay, so what we have today is these are both out of the Backyard Farmer Garden. The big tall one here is a Squirrel iris, and this is one actually that was collected from Fontenelle Forest. Great big beautiful clump, kind of on the edges of our rain chain. So iris, of course, don't bloom for a long period of time, but it's pretty spectacular, likes a well-drained soil. The second one is one of the many sedums, and this happens to be Kamchatka sedum. It's also called Russian sedum. There are a handful of cultivars of it. Fleshy foliage, spreads to form a mound, just beginning to flower. And when this one does flower, it's absolutely covered with gold, and likes it dry, will take part shade. So a pretty decent combination with the yellow in the iris and the yellow in the sedum. All right, next up, picture questions. So Kyle, your first one here is a honeysuckle problem. This is a Missouri Valley, Iowa viewer. This is actually one of the vining honeysuckles too.
Okay.
She's wondering what is on her honeysuckle. We have, I think, a couple pictures of this one.
Yeah, definitely aphids. Beyond that, it's really hard to say. There's a number of aphid species which will use honeysuckle as a host. The species of honeysuckle would help narrow it down, but most of them aren't really a problem. Mm-hmm. There are a few species, non-native, that can be problematic. One's commonly called honeysuckle aphid. I don't think that's the case here because they get more of a waxy coating. Also, these had like a longer black cornicle, which is just kind of, if you were able to zoom in, it's the tailpipes on the end of the body. It's darker on these, which those don't have, so I don't think that's the case here. But they use honeysuckle year-round, so it's both the primary and secondary host. And they will cause, they'll feed on those developing shoots and can cause some problems. And so if it was that, you might have to treat with a systemic. I don't think that's the case here, though. It's probably a relative of that, like a phenyl aphid maybe, or something else. And in that case, I would just say, if you need to treat, insecticidal soaps are really generally effective for aphids. So that's what I'd try.
Excellent. All right, this is Scotts Bluff coming to us. And wait a minute, this is Harlan County, I guess. So bee balm has been reduced to stems from these little guys. Great pictures. What are these?
Yeah, this is really interesting. This is a tortoise beetle, bee balm tortoise beetle. And you can tell that because of the, they have a characteristic little fork at the end of their body, and they'll actually collect their skin as they shed it and feces, and then they'll use it as a shield over their body to deter predators. It's pretty cool. They are not usually a problem. They don't usually cause a bunch of injury to plants, tortoise beetles in general. So there's not really, anything that's labeled specifically for them. If you were looking to control them, it looks like they've done a number here. But something, labeled for leaf-feeding beetles should be effective. Spinosad is probably a good option, and that's something that's, relatively good, compatible with, with natural enemies. So that might be a good option.
Excellent. And your final picture here is just a simple, what kind of spider do we have here?
Unfortunately, I'm not sure. I just can't see enough detail on this this spider. It doesn't look like it's either of our spiders that would be that are venomous or a concern medically. So,
not to worry.
Not brown recluse or black widow, I'm pretty sure, but I'm not certain beyond that.
All right, excellent. All right, Bill. This is a La Vista viewer. They have, they think the oak tree is actually doing this to the turf, and they wonder what to do about the lawn under that oak.
Yeah, it could be. I don't think that it probably is. What do you think? You're a tree person. You would say no. I'm thinking. I'm looking at that. How are they mowing? I see there's kind of stripe patterns in that mower. Are we getting certain levels of wear around it? Could it be some kind of a low area? Could it be a disease? Could it be like a white downy or powdery mildew that's making that color? So kind of hard to see from this angle, but I wouldn't think that small tree would be causing the damage. I mean, we'll see that with like spruce trees drying out, and then the grass looks dry. That doesn't look like what I would think.
So maybe if he sends us some close-ups.
Yeah, just
later
from
in the
that image,
season.
it's really hard to say what that is, but I'm pretty sure it's not from the tree.
All right. Your next one here is a Omaha viewer. What are the circles in the turf?
Yep, that is fairy ring. So that is a pathogen, not pathogen, it's a fungi, Basidiomycete, that is feeding on dead organic matter, and as it's eating the sugar, it's releasing the nitrogen fertilizer, and then the lawn is benefiting from it. And so that lawn is very chlorotic, low on N, so if you wanted to add a little bit of fertilizer to it, you probably wouldn't even see that anymore, but you're not going to be able to stop it because the food is there and the fungi are going to eat it.
Excellent. All right, your next one is also Omaha. This is a viewer who says he had powdery mildew. You have a couple pictures here, Bill. He was out of town, came back, and some of the turf had turned this straw-like color. What do you see here?
Yep. So with the weather that we had in late May, with the humidity and the heat and the warm nights, we saw a lot of leaf spots melting out and dollar spot. You could grow disease on concrete, I think. It was pretty bad. So I'm pretty sure that that's what that was, and the changes in the weather should help that out. I wouldn't really recommend treating their foliar diseases. The grass will simply regrow from the crown, and you'll be mowing it right off. So, yep, probably just one of our leaf spots in this weather.
Excellent. Thank you, Bill. All right. Dennis, this is a viewer who wonders if we can identify this bird's nest. The inside diameter is only a couple of inches, and total is 3 inches, and she wonders if it's a hummingbird's nest.
Usually hummingbirds' nests are more conical shaped, but it could be, or it could be a small, like a finch. So I would go more for the finch, but again, it's something for an ornithologist.
It's kind of big for a hummingbird too, isn't it?
Yeah, hummingbirds are really small. I would say more of a finch.
All right.
Yeah.
Your next one is, this is a Central Lincoln viewer who said this little baby owl fell out of the tree and they put it back. They want to know what kind is it and will it be okay?
It's a screech owl as far as I can see, and it should be fine.
All right.
I mean, it depends on, usually if you put them back in the tree, they're okay, especially if the parents aren't around. But.
All right, excellent. Then you have a couple pictures here. This is a Eustis, Nebraska viewer. She says one day they noticed there were tons of pieces of leaves on the ground around this tree. The tree looks terrible. All the other trees near it are fine. And then they noticed a black bird on the oak tree pecking at the leaves. Do you know of any birds that do this on purpose?
If there's insects there, yes. I don't know of a bird that would feed on the tree. It would feed on the flowers of the tree, or the phosphorescence of the tree. But they're probably some kind of insects. It could be anything from aphids. It could be a bird that likes aphids. And what they're doing is they're pecking for the food. I don't even know of a bird that would go after honeydew. It would have to be the actual insects. So, do you see anything, Kyle?
I didn't see any insects there, and I'm not aware of what
Or
might
their
do
feet.
that going after it. But there's certainly like our leaf miners. I don't know if there's any sort of birds that would go after.
Oh yeah, they would go after leaf miners.
Okay.
Yep, because you got to remember, flickers and woodpeckers go after larvae that are in wood. They can just hear them. So I say there's probably an insect problem, and the bird is just secondary.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Dennis. Well, many of you watch our winter program, Lifestyle Gardening. A few months ago, we were fortunate to hear from the folks at Kinghorn Gardens about how to start a plan to redesign your landscape. We wanted to follow up with that to show you how things actually get started. So here's Corey Brabeck and Ann Hauser from Kinghorn Gardens to tell us more.
So on this particular site, the client came to us because Brian worked with them a long time ago and because we did a project down the street. So they trusted us, knowing that their neighbors trusted us, to come forth and meet with them and review their garden. They had worked really hard on this house. They renovated this house from the inside out, and then they started on the landscape. And they did a really good job. Like, they picked good plant material, they picked good bones, they have great rooms, the great spaces already established here. They just kind of picked some of the rogue plants that maybe got a little out of control and a little beyond what their maintenance capabilities were. I mean, they're great gardeners, they have a great vegetable area as well. But we just needed to come in and kind of help them figure out, you know, more appropriate plants for the space that are going to be easier for them to maintain in their retirement lifestyle.
So the tree canopy really matured here, and as you can see behind us, we're looking at aspens, and we know that aspens can grow very quickly. So the picture changed under here very quickly. And so when Ann came in, I know she's talking to them about some of the plants they had chosen, some of the plants that they like, some of the plants that maybe need to go away, some we can culture from a maintenance standpoint. But as you can see, there's a lot of things that happened here in the last few years, and Ann mentioned that they picked great plant material, but right now it's just not working where it's planted because of shade issues, because of moisture issues. A number of different things can affect those plants.
So in this garden, what we're doing is trying to control the stuff that was here. So we did a chemical control on it to try to create a clean slate for the new plantings to come in. Because what you don't want to create a new garden and have somebody be frustrated with the fact that stuff is coming back up that used to be here that caused the issue and aggravation in the first place. So what we're doing is spraying a chemical control on the existing plant material so that we can make sure that we get rid of that. And then we're actually going to till it into the ground for the most part and create a biomass for the new plant material. And then that way, what's here can actually benefit the next landscape.
So in renovation of this garden, we come in first with the design plan. And the first thing we needed to do was decide what we wanted to keep and what needed to go. So this is in the very beginning phases, so you can see there are some things that have been sprayed so we can remove them, and some things we're going to physically remove.
Some of the, like we mentioned, some of the plant material just got a little bit crazy. Like they want to draw wildlife and nature into this garden, and they're excited about that. They want to feed the birds, they want to, you know, invite the pollinators. So initially, just some of the things they picked were just a little rough and tumble.
So some of the plants in the garden are very aggressive, and some of them are natives, and when we bring them into an urban setting, they can become aggressive. And so we're going to work with a client and see how we can keep some of their favorites and maybe add in some of our favorites and kind of marry those two together. And then as we go down the road, whether it be this fall into next season, we'll culture them from a maintenance standpoint and show them really how to keep all those things flowing together without things getting out of hand once again.
To see the first part of the design process, check out the Backyard Farmer YouTube site to watch the feature. All right, our final round of pictures. Kyle, your very first one. Their pine has patches of these holes. The spot's about 8 feet above the ground. There are more higher up the tree and many singles. What is this?
Yeah, this is not an insect. This is a bird again. So it looks like a woodpecker sapsucker. That's causing this here.
Going after those creepy crawlies inside.
I don't know if in this case they would actually be going after insects. I think they may get some, but I think they're usually more irregular when they're trying to get insects.
Right.
Pretty cool, and no, it won't kill the tree, right? No, it won't kill the tree. All right, let's see. Your second picture here is, I think we have a couple, and this is silver maple. This is in Omaha. It's been growing in a pot, and then he has cut it back for pruning, and this year he's seeing these red bumps on the leaves. He thought it was eggs, but it's not, and of course this is probably round one of seeing this year, right?
Yeah, these look like maple bladder galls. And these are actually caused by an areophyid mite. They're just really tiny microscopic mites that they induce these galls. They're really not problematic, certainly not on any established tree, but on something younger, you know, if it was really overwhelming the leaves, it could be stressful. Not much you can do. Maybe you remove them if there was a lot. Otherwise, there's, you know, once they're in there, not much you can do to treat them.
All right. This is an Omaha viewer for your last one who found some frass, webbing, some kinds of caterpillars or borers, insects in the top of one of his thistles that he actually grows on purpose for the goldfinches and the beneficials. He wonders what these are, and he doesn't mind sharing, but he doesn't want to lose his thistles entirely.
My best guess, since it's thistle, what I can see in the description, maybe a thistle caterpillar. They can be a problem in crops like soybeans. It's actually the caterpillar for painted lady butterflies, and they'll do that. They'll make kind of this nest with web and roll leaves up and then feed inside of that. It protects them. So that would be my best guess. I can't actually see it, but it shouldn't kill the thistle or anything. I don't think you'd have to worry about it.
And the painted ladies are awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Kyle. All right, Bill, this is an Ashland viewer. She has a fescue lawn. She's been noticing some different shoots. Sometimes they're randomly spread. I think we have another picture on this one too. What's this and what does she do about it?
Yeah, that is the seed head forming. So that is natural. That plant is trying to make seed. Grasses try to make seed generally right up until the start of summer. So you're starting to see that pushing right now, and so you're going to see these pop up and your mower will get them down, but this is just a normal thing for the grass.
All right, excellent. And your next two, this is a Shenandoah, Iowa viewer. She's wondering, is this Bermuda grass? She says it's a real pain and almost impossible to eradicate. It keeps creeping into her flower beds.
Yeah, not Bermuda. They think this is nimblewill. It's a warm season perennial, one of the rare ones that survive in Nebraska. And the Bermuda grass wouldn't be green yet. It's just not been hot enough for it. So that's why I think it's nimblewill. If it's in your beds, you try to pull it out. You could use non-selective. If it's in a lawn, you could use things like a Pilex or a Tenacity. Those would be things that you could use in a lawn. But in a bed, you're probably best just trying to pull it and then use the non-selective treatments very carefully.
All right, excellent. All right, Dennis, your first one here is a single picture. The viewer is wondering, are these baby rabbits? They were in a shallow hole covered with grass, and why would a rabbit have them in a place like that, especially if there are dogs in the yard?
Well, yes, they are baby rabbits, and our rabbits, the cottontail, does not dig a hole. It doesn't live in a hole, but it does dig what we call a form. It digs a pocket about 4 to 6 inches down. The female will take the fur off of her ventral side or belly, line this pocket with that fur, and then have the babies and put grass over it. Not be around, and then every night lay over the top of that to feed those babies for about a week. So if there's no dogs or cats around at night, they don't perceive it as a problem. Okay,
Interesting.
and so the babies are there, and of course during the day, if a cat or dog finds them or another animal, they do what baby rabbits do. They're a snack for every other wildlife. That's why you get so many every year. They're biomasses for other animals. So.
All right, On that note, this is a viewer who says they live near one of those urban detention pond areas in Millard, and the geese are a huge problem. What can be done to keep them off the property and from eating plants and doing goose poop all over?
Okay, if they're on your private property, there are repellents that you could use that keep the geese from landing there. Okay, the geese start to land, they smell this material. It's called, there's like 3 different types, goose chase, and it's methyl anthraxate, I think is the name of the chemical. However, if they're on a property that you do not own, it's on public property or NRD property, that's not your problem, you can't do anything about it.
All right.
And then you can call Game and Parks and even the feds, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, do have programs for Canada geese that do have some protection when they're outside of those private land areas.
All right, thank you, Dennis.